Okay. So let's get going. A lot in today. I've done a little jump to chapter 6 of the Rambam, but we're in the same theme of Ben Adam leChavero. I want to start with a question, however, before we dive into the sources. And the question I have is actually very much related to the parasha this week, interestingly enough, because there is an interesting line in the parasha, which is almost a stand-alone line, which says, Midvar sheker tirchak. You have to distance yourself from lying. Lying. Remember that as a kid? Right? Your mother would say, did you do your homework? Yes. Did you make that mess? No. And you were lying, right? Well, I know I was, whenever, I was asked to do my homework or whatever. And where were you last night? Oh, I can't remember. What are your plans for the rest of the day? Hanging out with those friends I told you not to hang out with? No. What is the halacha? How far does this lying thing go? And it's going to relate very much to this because when it comes to our relationship to each other, lying is a big part of our conversations, our plans, our actions, and our relationships. So I want to start with 3 stories that are going to prove to you, my dear friends, that lying is not what you think it is. And these stories are from the Torah. And each one of them involve lying between people and, it's going to sound crazy, Hashem, God as well. Okay? So when the Torah says, distance yourself far away from lying, tirchak, really, to be quite honest, it's probably talking about lying in a court of law. That's really the main place. But lying in general actually falls under the rubric of lashon hara. You should not speak. Falsehood falls under speaking well when you talk to people. And actually, we're going to see 3 clear exceptions to this. And it's called shinoi b'derech shalom. You're allowed to change the truth in order to keep peace. And here are those 3 stories. The first one involves Ysf Sadik. Remember that Yosef was sold by his brothers. And there he was in Israel, having a wonderful time with his brothers. He's having dreams about his great future. His brothers get jealous and they sell him. Many years later, the brothers come down, they make up, and the whole thing is sorted out. Remember, I don't tell the whole story. And Yaakov, Yosef's father, dies. The brothers get nervous. They're like, now Yosef is going to take revenge against us. Now we're in trouble. What's he going to do? Up to now, we've had Yaakov, our father, his spirit, his body's been there with us, and now he's gone. He's going to take revenge. Maybe he held back all these years. He hadn't. He was never going to take revenge. But they were nervous. So they turned around to Yosef and they said, Yosef, you remember before he died? Our father said, don't take revenge against me, right? Don't take revenge against Yosef. Did Yaakov actually say that to the brothers about Yosef? No. They made it up because Yaakov never even expected them to worry about Yosef taking revenge. He lied. They lied. No problem. They did a good thing because it could have been that he would have taken revenge and they were allowed to lie in order to protect themselves. Story number 1. Story number 2 involves HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. This is a strange story. We know that Shaul, King Saul, lost the kingship to David HaMelech, before David was Melech. And what he did was, he became very depressed and very upset. He was meant to kill the king of Amalek, whose name was Agag. He never did it. And so God said to Shmuel, the prophet, go and tell King Saul and tell King David that he's going to be the new king. So Shmuel's like, this is Shaul HaMelech. He's still the king. And when I go and I tell him and he sees me going to anoint King David, he's going to kill me. Do you know what God said to him? No problem. Take a small animal with you on the way, and if Shaul sees you, just say, oh, you want to know where I'm going? I'm just going to go bring this as a korban, that's all. I have a little, korban business to take care of. So in story number 2, God himself advises Shmuel to lie. Extraordinary. In order to potentially save his life. That's story number 2. Story number 1, okay, it's a life-threatening situation, right? Yaakov's sons are nervous that Yosef's going to take revenge. I hear. Story number 2, okay, it's a little bit, life-threatening. He's the king. The king is allowed to kill in those circumstances. But story number 3 is even stranger. Story number 3 is a story between Abraham and Sarah Imenu, a very famous story. We know that they were visited when they were much older, Abraham and Sarah, by Malachim. And one of the angels that came to visit Abraham and Sarah, turned around to Sarah and said, by the way, in a year's time, you're going to have a baby. What does she do? She laughed. She's like, what are you talking about? I'm an old woman. And my husband, Adoni Zaken, he's an old man. Do you know the strangest thing? Right after that episode, Hashem talks to Abraham and says, when I told her she's going to have a baby, she laughed. She couldn't believe it. The great Sarah Imenu, the great prophetess, the great Neviah, she didn't believe it. And she also said that she's old. She didn't say that she's old. She said that he's old. So when Hashem related the story of what Sarah said, he changed the truth and God himself lied. Say Chazal, you can see it in the words themselves, to say that she didn't insult him by saying he's old. Now, is that an insult? Not much of an insult. I mean, she told the truth. He was old. He was almost 100 years old, actually. And by the way, let's say that God would have actually told Abraham what she said. Would he have been upset? Trust me when I say that Sarah and Abraham had amazing shalom bayit. There is absolutely no way that Abraham would have been upset or insulted in any way, because it was actually a matter of fact. He was very old, and so was she. And yet God himself doesn't even want an insult like this to hang in the air that could even cause a moment of shalom bayit problems between husband and wife. So God himself proves to us that in order to keep shalom in families, in communities, you're allowed to lie, if your intention is to keep shalom between people. And here's the unusual fact that comes with this. The Torah says you're not allowed to lie. That's what the Torah says. And yet we're saying, no, but you can lie in order, shinui, but derech shalom, in order to keep shalom between people. You know what that means? That means that when you do say those words, which may not have actually happened, you're not lying. But I am lying. He never said that. They never said that. Whatever the situation is, we're now redefining what a sheker is. It may sound like a lie, it may smell like a lie, but in this circumstance, since it's there to promote peace, it's not a lie at all. A great prelude, by the way, we could speak a lot about this topic, there's a lot more to say. We know that Aaron HaKohen, the high priest, was the master at keeping shalom between people. I'll tell you one story from the Midrash, actually. Beautiful story, that Aaron would hear people fighting. Like, sometimes walk past the tent and he'd hear husbands and wives, like, going at each other. Right? And what would he do? He'd hear them and they would separate. In those days, what are you going to do? Everyone had one Bet Knesset. You couldn't get into a fight with some neighbor and then, right, I'm not going to pray in your Bet Knesset ever again. You know what I'm saying? You're stuck, right? There's only one Mishkan. Where are you going to go? So what Aaron HaKohen used to do, he would go up to one of the parties. Listen to this. We have to learn from this, because it says you have to learn, be one of the students of Aaron HaKohen, right? Oev Shalom, Rodef Shalom. It's really the theme of what we're discussing tonight. He would go up to one of them privately, be like, you know what, I heard about your fight, right? You fought with Moshe, this guy over here. Tell you the truth, he's really, really upset. He told me that he's so embarrassed what he said to you and he really wants to make peace. The guy never said any such thing. And then Aaron would go to the other guy and say, Ruvain, he's so upset what happened. It's eating him alive. He wish he wouldn't have said those things to you. He's too embarrassed, so he asked me to come. Did Ruvain say anything like that? Nope. Not at all. Aaron made the whole thing up. But when they saw each other, they're like, you want to be friends? Come here, and they would hug each other. He spent his entire life doing that. You know, when Moshe Rabbeinu died, people were very, very upset. The great Moshe Rabbeinu, and he didn't want to believe he was dead, and they mourned for 7 days. When Aaron died, they mourned, says the Torah, Shloshim for 30 days. It affected them more, because he built such a loving relationship. And remember, Aaron HaKohen was the one in Egypt for all those years. Moshe Rabbeinu was missing all those years, right? He had to escape for his life. Aaron was the chief rabbi, so they felt it. All these stories, and there's many, many more, all are a great introduction to today's discussion that the Torah wants to promote peace. In every circumstance, in every situation. Even to go as far as, we're going to see an incredible Rambam that many people are not even aware exists, that if someone upsets you, you must go up to them and tell them that they've done it in order to bring peace with you. You're not allowed to keep hatred in your heart. It is an isur in the Torah. Usually keeping something in your heart is actually not a problem until you act upon it, but hatred is one of those exceptions, says the Rambam. Let's do it inside, shall we? Fabulous. Okay, so the Rambam starts chapter 6 by saying, it's natural, derech briyato shel adam, that a person's character and their actions are influenced by their friends. Achareyav. Your mother always said to you, choose your friends wisely. She was right. You want to be very careful. You are more affected by your friends than anything else. That's how he starts it. And then you're going to be influenced by your medina, by the local norms of your people you live with. Right? As they say, you have to choose your neighbors as well. Stay away from bad neighbors. He's going to talk about if you've only got bad neighbors around you, what you're going to be able to do. He's going to discuss that soon. But for now, if you got a choice, you pick the best people to be friends with, the people who are the best influence for you in your life. Okay? Lefikach, therefore, he says, tzarich adam litchaber letzadikim. Surround yourself with people who are tzadikim, like everyone around this table. V'leishev etzel chachamim. And sit down with wise people, tamid, all the time, in order to learn from their actions. It's interesting. He doesn't say learn from their knowledge, interestingly, but from their actions, the way they act. By the way, that includes a lot of things, by the way. It includes the way they talk, for sure. Also the way they eat, the way they talk to their kids. Many people will say to me, I had a very bad upbringing, and my parents, were always fighting, and they'll tell me terrible stories. And I'll say, okay, what you're going to have to do right now is find good families that have healthy behaviors, go for Shabbat, and see how they talk. You can learn. These are learnable skills. The Rambam is saying you can learn how to live a good life. The excuse of, well, I had a terrible childhood. I hear, I feel for you, I get it. But you can still learn. Sit around good people and learn how to behave well. It's a very, very possible thing. Stay far away. There's that same language again. Stay far away from bad people who walk in darkness. It doesn't mean they wear sunglasses, although maybe they do. It means they don't have any vision in order not to learn from them. And he's going to quote King Solomon, the wisest of all people, who says in Mishlei, Holech et hachachamim yichakem v'roeh kesilim yiroeh. If you follow wise people, you'll become wise. If you follow foolish people, you're going to become a bad person. All right? You're going to suffer badly. V'omeh ashrei ish. It says, praiseworthy is the person who follows in the path of good people. V'chen, imaya medina. If you live in a place, shemin hadgotea ra'im, that people just behave badly, just like not good people. That's not this neighborhood, Baruch Hashem, right? But if you, and the people aren't good, they don't follow a good path, yelech lemakom shanasher tzadikim. Move. Sell your house and get out. Don't stay there, he says. By the way, the Rambam, as a side point, I read a little history of the Rambam a few weeks back, some book I was reading. He was traveling all over the place. He's all over. He was in Egypt, he was in Spain, and different places along the way. I mean, most of that was because there was a lot of anti-Semitism. He couldn't remain in one place for too long. He was in Morocco, actually. When I was in Morocco last, or 2 summers ago, we actually stood outside one of the universities, supposedly. There's a big door. They said, the Rambam studied over here for a little while. Well, maybe he did, maybe he didn't. It's a good selling point. They probably made good money from tourists. But there's something to it. He's moving around. He followed the same thing. If, he says, you hear that everywhere that you end up going is going to be bad people, and look what he says next. Kumoz maneno, like in our day. My God, can you imagine that? It's the Rambam talking in his day. Right? They didn't have internet in his day. I promise you. There was no social media. And he's talking about his day, right, when things were they were tough. Wow. What would the Rambam say right now if he walked into a... Let's not think about it. Okay. He says, in such a situation, clear far away. Let's say you're stuck in a place and you're not able to go anywhere, right? Because it's difficult or because you're ill. Better to sit alone. Yeshiv levado yechidi. And he's going to quote Eicha, the book of Eicha, Yoshev badad v'yedom. Sit alone and be quiet. Better to sit alone than to hang out with bad people. Okay? But the best alternative is to find good people who inspire you. You know, it just came to my head, I must tell you. There's this thing that people go to reunions from high school and stuff. You ever done that? You have reunions there? But you're too young. But you'll get to a point where they'll have the 5-year reunion and the 10-year reunion and the 20-year. My advice is, excuse me for saying this, don't go. Don't go. It's just going to cause trouble, right? It's depressing, and you're going to see the people become extremely wealthy, right? Or you can see the people. And then I'll tell you the truth. So my wife had her reunion, and she schlepped me along, which was a nice event, whatever. I won't tell her age, but it was like the 25-year reunion, whatever it was. So we went to this reunion in her school, and people were there. And then I turned around to her and said, have you seen any of these people? She goes, I've not seen them in years. I said, it's probably a reason why. Sorry to tell you. Right? It's probably a reason why you disconnect from these people in the first place. If they're good people, you would have actually gone out of your way to stay in contact. You know, there's friends, kind of like grow up with, and you stay with them, and they remain children, you know? And they come up to you years later. I mean, you're not completely there yet because, you know, but you'll get to a point now and you'll be like, oh my God, they are exactly the same as we were in high school. And I have nothing to say to them whatsoever. We have no connection. The only connection we have is we spent a few years together in the high school, right? That is not a friend. That is an associate you have some shared memories with. Friends are people in Hebrew who you can create a chibur with. People who are there to help you become better versions of yourself. One of my best friends, you should know, who I'm still in contact with, it's someone who tells me off regularly for doing stupid things. Everyone needs one friend like that. That one person, right, who says, what are you doing? And not just like, what are you wearing? And that's a big deal. But you did a terrible thing. And I speak to this guy often, and it's painful to speak to him, right? And I love him dearly, you know? And he'll say to me, you did the wrong thing. You said that. That was a nice thing to say to that person. And I confide in him, and he's one of the people who is there. And that's a real friend is someone who's going to tell you the truth, and they only have your best interests at heart. They're not jealous of you. They want the best for you. And that person could be your age, they could be younger, they could be much older, they could be a rabbi, I don't care. But everyone needs a friend they can confide in. The Gemara says, find someone you can confide in who's going to tell you the truth about yourself. And in many cases, that's painful. That's a real friend. Let's say you live in a place where you're forced to mingle with them, right? You have no choice. Says the Rambam, go to a desert, live in a cave. That's just what he says. Right? He quotes Jeremiah. Who's going to give me a lodging place for the wearers in the desert? Right? It's like you got to really, it's going to impact them. I'm going to add a little piece over here, which is not no gear to you young ladies yet, but it will be very, very much so when it comes to kids. Okay? You got to pray, because it's difficult. Now that depends on school, but it also depends on where you live. You have two choices where you live, by the way. just, you're not there yet, but just put it somewhere in your hippocampus, right? There's going to be a time you can choose to live near your kids' friends, right? Or in an area where there's lots of young kids, and then your kids are kind of forced to hang out with those kids, which is nice because they have friends near them, but then you don't get to help them choose their friends because they're kind of living around them. The alternative is, some people live a little bit further out, a little bit, you don't live too far out, but a little bit further out so that you have to drive, then they get to choose their friends more. Kind of like this double thing, right? So, because sometimes when you live in a neighborhood, it's kind of potluck, right? Even the nicest families sometimes, have kids who you may not want your kids to socialize with. I'm just telling you, those are the two variables that come with it, and both have an advantage and a disadvantage. Ideally, you want to be able to choose who your friends, your kids, hang out with and treat as friends. It's going to influence them incredibly, okay? As I say to my daughter's friends, why selling out my daughter? She's a bad influence on you. I'm only kidding, although I do say it to them. Okay, very, very good. He goes to the next phase. Mitzvah aseh. This is a mitzvah. This is a mitzvah in the Torah. Lehidabek b'chachamim, to cleave to wise people, v'letalmidehem, and to their disciples. So you want to hang out with wise people, to stick with them, and their disciples, the people who learn from them as well. Kedei, in order, lilmod mimaseim ke'inin shenamar, as we said already, ovot tidbak. So there's a pasuk in the Torah that says you should cleave to Hashem. Like stick, devek, like glue yourself to God. How do I glue myself to God? How do I connect? How do I become, best friends with God? He goes, do you know the best way to do it? Find people who follow God's ways and become besties with them. And find a rabbi who has good rabbis who learn very well because they're disciples of other great people, and stick to them. That's what he says. That's are you able, so the Rambam is asking rhetorically, are you really able to attach yourself to God's Shekhinah, God's presence? Obviously not, right? God's not physical. He said, no problem. Find the great rabbis and teachers, stick to them. You're actually fulfilling this mitzvah in the Torah. The Rambam lists it in one of the mitzvot to stick to God. And they actually describe this mitzvah in the Torah of attaching yourself to God by attaching yourself to people who represent God, i.e. great scholars. Lafika, by the way, not just rabbis. I always like to point this out. One of my great advice I have, by the way, everyone needs to have on their phone many, many rabbis. Right? If I grab your phone right now, which I'm not going to do, but you type in the word rabbi, you need to have at least 20, 30 come up. At least. On my phone, I've got like 500. You know what I'm saying? I got one for everything. You know what I'm saying? Whenever I need a credit, it's there. You need to have a rabbi on WhatsApp constant. I'm part of, I don't know, some of you may be part of, I don't even know. I'm part of some WhatsApp groups. Are you anyone part of that group that I'm on? I get questions, me and another rabbi on it too, we get questions every single day. Whether it's a kosher symbol, or this, or that. It's always kosher for some reason. No one's asking me how to become a better person. They want to know whether they can eat this, this bag of chips. You know what I'm saying? But that's fine. I don't care. As long as they're asking. You need to have someone on speed dial. They need to be there, boom, for you all the time. And you need to build that relationship. By the way, as a side point, it's in my head. When you get married, you need to find one person who's a default rabbi that when you have a machloket on big issues, you both agree that this is the person you're going to go to have that answered. We have such a person. We have a rabbi, and my wife and I decided many years ago when we have issues when it comes to chinuch banim, right, and banot, when it comes to, this is the person we both agree, because we have differences of opinion, right? I have my opinion, and she has the right opinion. So what we do, if you know my wife, that would make sense. But we have a rabbi we go to, and we check in with him. Yeah, it's very, very important. You need to have such a person in your life ready to go. You need many, but you need at least one, okay, who's going to become your arbiter when it comes to these kind of things, okay? Okay, very good. So you need to have those people in your life. Lefikach sarich adam lishtadel. Therefore, a person has to put great effort. Sheyisa bat talmid chacham. You want to marry the daughter of a talmid chacham, and it works both ways. V'yisi bitol talmid chacham, and marry your daughter. So you've got to marry the daughter of talmid chacham, and you want to marry your daughters to the child of Talmid Chacham. Right? You want to attach yourself, marry them, become part of it. V'le'echol, and eat. V'lishtot, and drink. There it is. You're like, why would I want to eat and drink with them? What's that about? You can learn a lot about a person by how they eat, how they act in public company, how they run the Shabbat table. I learned a lot. I have a wonderful family. Amazing. They should live and be well, wonderful, wonderful parents. But there's only so much your parents can teach you. Yeah? My father isn't a big Talmid Chacham, he's a big tzaddik, no doubt about that. He's up 5 a.m, he goes to Bet Knesset, he's one of the first ones there, Shirim, amazing. But we all need other people to teach us. That's okay. And if you do not go to seminary, which I know in this community in Great Neck, they don't do a year in Israel, unfortunately, it's becoming more and more common, right? You're going to have to find someone local to help fill that gap. It's a shame. I'm very much in favor of boys and girls spending at least 1 year going to study in Eretz Yisrael. I know that in the Persian community, right, it's a little, still a little bit, but it's okay. Your time will still come, but it's okay. Still, you need to create that experience, right, here in Chutz La'aretz. Okay, so you want to eat with them and drink with them and go for Shabbat. I mean, I'll be honest with you, many times you want to see things that you don't want to be. That's also okay. I can tell you many stories about. Can I tell you one crazy story? Actually, it came to my head. I was in yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael for a number of years, and you basically eat nothing all week. There's literally no food, and Shabbat is the time you want to go, right? To get a decent homemade, because the food in yeshiva was. When I went to yeshiva, back in the early 90s, it was bad. You know what I'm saying? It was like you're not feeding me. So Shabbat was the time we would go. So there was a certain rabbi who was there, and this very, very nice man. But he said, "Come to the house. We're going to give you, So I went there, and literally, I remember there were like 3 peas on my plate. I'm like, I'm going to die this week. I'm going to die of starvation. This is going to last me all week. And I'm saying, then you won't know who it is, so it's okay. And he put me in a room. He had a small apartment. It's Eretz Yisrael. He's a Kolel guy. I don't know who he was at this point. I can't remember his name. He put me in a bedroom and said, "You're sleeping here." And I see there's a crib in the room. So I was like, "Oh, right, there's a crib there." I look in, there's a baby in there. So I'm like, there's a baby in the room. They're going to put me to sleep with a baby in the room? So I didn't understand. I was like, okay, maybe this is something that happens. Maybe people do this. Middle of the night, baby starts crying. Now, I'm the youngest child, so I never had any younger siblings. I never held a baby in my entire life, right? I mean, between this event and me having babies, that was the next time, my own children. I never held a baby for my entire life. I know which end, but I saw enough movies, you know what I'm saying? So I said, baby starts crying, and the mother never came. I'm like, this is so weird. Baby's screaming. I'm like 2 a.m. I hadn't eaten. I'm starving hungry. I literally got a mamash 3 peas. And I was looking for the meat on the plate, and they were hiding under the peas. This literally what it was like. Ribono Shalom. I couldn't believe it. And then, this baby's crying. I'm like, this is like so surreal. I thought it was like a movie. I'm being filmed. So I pick up the baby like I saw in the movies. I start moving around. That's what I saw. Patting it on the back. Eventually the baby calms down, and I put it back in the crib. I don't know, I put it on his head. I don't even know what I was doing. Next morning, I saw the mother of the house, and she like, she had a great night's sleep. Oh, she schluffed good. So I go. I said, excuse me, but your baby woke up in the middle of the night. She goes, yeah, I know, I heard him. I said, then why didn't you come and get him? So she said, well, I thought that if he saw a face he doesn't recognize, he'd calm down. Now, at the time, I thought that made sense. Looking back, that is the craziest thing I've heard in my entire life. What kind of baby's going to calm down, right, when there's a complete stranger in the room? Would you calm down if you sort of saw a stranger in your room who just picked you up and shook you around like a bottle of soda? I don't think so. So we learn how to act. We also learn how not to act. There's many things we can learn from other people. You know what I'm saying? It's all good. Okay. So we're going to learn from them, and we're going to understand and eat with them, he says, and drink with them, and lasot pragmatia imahem, and do business with them. Okay? You want to give parnasah to a rabbi, to a teacher, because usually these people don't make enough money when it comes to what they do for a living, and therefore, if you can do business with great rabbis and teachers, you're doing a tremendous mitzvah. Okay? Tremendous mitzvah. So a Talmid Chacham, ultchaber lehem, right? As it says, that's how you attach yourself to them. And he quotes a Mishnah Pirkei Avot that says that you should sit at their feet, right? At the dust of their feet, and you should drink their words as though you were dying of thirst. Okay, we're good so far. Okay, now let's get a bit more deep over here. He says, now it goes even further. So now you found your friends, you found your community, you found your rabbi, you've got everything set up. Remember, it's three things. PPT, by Shana. PPT, people, places, things. That's really what we're about. People you hang around with, that's number one. Wise people, good people. Places, where you live, where you work, what you do. All these things are very, very important. Not every company, not every place that people work is always a good choice for a good Jewish boy or girl. It's okay. Not every career is a great choice for every. I know everyone says become a lawyer. I know people, good people who end up working in law firms and this is maybe legal, but ethically I feel I'm being pushed over here. Get out. Cut your losses. This is going to influence and impact who you are. I must tell you a story. Okay? We're adults over here, so I'm going to tell you an honest story over here. There was a girl who came from extremely religious home. Really. I mean, she was a Bet Yaakov girl, always good, never messed around. She was offered a job in a company that had a number of people. Okay? She was a very, very smart girl, and she worked her way up. And she started dating, and she hated dating, which we all do. You've got to be abnormal if you enjoy dating, right? I didn't enjoy it when I did it, and I'm not enjoying it now that my kids are doing it. Okay, but that's just the way it is. We've got to go through this whole process. We've got to date. She started to feel sorry for herself. I'm telling you, if you met this girl, I mean, her stockings were thick and bulletproof. This is the most religious person I've ever, tremendous, but a good person. There was a guy who was working with her, right? Nice guy, Italian dude, and she starts talking to him more and more. And he sees this very wonderful, refined Jewish woman, and he starts talking, and every day it's like a little bit. They've got a water fountain, right, hanging out over there in the coffee room, and she starts speaking to him, and they get closer and closer and closer. Within a short amount of time, he says, please come out, and she kept pushing. I can't, I'm a religious girl from a family, I need to get married, I can't be messing around. He's like, no, I'm serious. She started dating him. They came to me 2 years after they met. So when I got involved, it was already 2 years. If you saw her and him, you're like, what are these two people doing together? She's still there in the full garb, right? Looked like a Rebbitzin, mamash, like middle party, you know what I'm saying? Sitting there, talking to me, very sweet, right? Very nudgy, hello, very nice. And she's talking like this. And this guy's sitting there with the slick back hair, nice professional guy. I'm like, how did this happen? Right? You've got to be careful. You've got to know who you're talking to. You've got to choose your friends. You've got to choose your workplace. Don't become over familiar with anybody. Particularly married men. And when I'm with boys, I say, do not mess with married women. Be very, very careful. It came into my head, I've got to tell you this, but I said it to someone just on Sunday morning. I had a meeting with someone. He asked me certain questions, and I said, and I say this to boys all the time, you do not mess with married women. I don't care if she's not spoken to her husband in years, Khalila, right? He just hasn't given her a get. Don't mess with it. The only time we see in the Torah Hashem getting angry is when it comes to this one area. Hashem does not like the breakdown of the family unit. I was going to mention it, but I have to. Min Shemayim, I have to say it. You don't mess. It says lo tinaf, don't commit adultery. That's the way. That word is a very unusual word. It doesn't appear, as far as I know, anywhere else in scriptures. Lo tinaf. The word tinaf means ten af. Give nose. What's nose? Af, anger. Because when you get angry, like, the only time you see God getting angry, I don't know what that means, by the way. But whatever it is, it's not good. You don't want to get God angry. You know what I'm saying? Is when this happens. So don't over familiarize yourself with a married man, keep a distance. In my community, where I come from, it's going to sound extreme, and I didn't used to like this, but I get it, and I don't always hold by it myself. They don't call married women by their first names. Right? We just don't do it. It's going to sound, it sounds like what is it, medieval times? What is it, Victorian England? Maybe I wish it was. But it just adds an extra layer. And remember, when do you see these people? When do usually families get together? During the week they're not getting together, usually Shabbat. So you kind of go to someone's house on Shabbat, and you see them, they all look good, right? They're not there Erev Shabbat when everyone's going crazy and flying. They walk in on Shabbat, everyone's looking good and comfortable, and start to, and the different husbands and wives start to hang out and schmooze with each other. And it's not like in the movies. In the movies, I know what happens. They see each other within 1 minute, poof, right? They're off. You know what I'm saying? In real life, it doesn't happen like that. It creeps up on you. It's slow. It's like a drip, drip, drip. It starts, it's a day, it's a week, it's a month, and it moves on from there. They become close, and they complain, they kvetch, and everyone can kvetch about their spouse, right? No doubt about it. Be very, very careful. It may not apply to you now, you're all single women, but still at some point, be careful who you become friends with as a married woman, especially your husband, because he's only going to see the other married women when they're at their best, dressed nicely for Shabbat. He's not going to see them when they're shouting at the kids, Erev Shabbat. Am I clear? Bank that, you'll thank me one day. Oh, and as a side point, if you have a cleaning lady in your house, make sure she's the ugliest thing that's ever landed on planet Earth. I don't care. I don't care if that's not PC. It's AC. I could tell you numerous stories of people who run off with a nanny, or, I may have mentioned this last class, or when one of the spouses dies, lo aleinu, right? They actually end up with a nanny. It's a little bit sensitive because she's been taking the kids. The kids know her already. They end up getting divorced from them as well. Happens a lot. Make sure a clean lady, she's got to look like the back end of a bus. Sorry, but that's the honest truth. And I may get told off for saying that, but I'm saving things. Okay, fine. So next, we have a few minutes left. Okay, fine. Next is love. Okay, so he says, mitzvah, al kol adam lehov et kol adav echad b'Yisrael. There is a mitzvah, he says, and everyone knows this, to love your fellow Jew, as it says, v'ahavta l'recha kamocha. You have to love other people like you love yourself. Now, very famously, the yourself aspect of that is you're meant to use yourself as the way to figure out how to like other people, right? I like it when people smile at me, so I'll smile at other people. I like it when people do favors for me. I like it when people don't speak lashon hara about me. So I'm going to do the same for other people. That's the kamocha part. Okay? Lefikach sarach lesaper b'shivcha. Therefore, you've got to say good things about them, v'lchos al mamona, and to take care of their money. Right? Just like you don't want people wasting your money, you don't want them wasting their money. Kasher chas al mamon atzma, just like you want people to take care of your money. Ruotze b'chvod atzma, and you like people to honor you and give you kavod. You do the same for other people. That's the kamocha part. But however, he says, people who like to degrade fellow people and put them down in order to lift themselves up, he quotes the Gemara that says, "En lo chelek l'olam haba." Such people don't have a share in the world to come. Now, I don't know precisely what that means, because Kol Yisrael yesh la b'chelek l'olam haba. Right? Every single Jewish person has a chelek in olam haba, but he seems to say, it's not just him, it's a very famous statement, people who enjoy looking down upon other people and put them down, they're losing their chelek in olam haba. In this world, they may be doing well, right? Because they've lifted themselves up on the shoulders of other people. Okay. Next. So that's loving others. Now, so he's like running through, right? Next is the three major groups that we're told to love more than anybody else. Who is that? The ger, the converts, the yatom, that is the orphan, and the almanah, and the widow. Those three, the Torah itself pulls out and says, you've got to be extra careful when it comes to these three. Why? What is it about these three that we're suddenly, they need extra love? What does that mean? You see some little kid, like, what's your name? My name's Timmy. Parents? No, they died in a coal mine accident. Come here, give me a hug. Right? That's what's going on over here. No. It means that people who have lost their main source of love and support, right? The almanah lo aleinu, lost a husband, The orphan doesn't have parents, okay? And the convert, it used to be that when a person converted to Judaism, the parents disowned them. I mean, now they're like, oh, fantastic, you're marrying a Jewish boy. But it didn't used to be like that. You were actually like kicked out of the house. That's the way it was for a long, long time. So he says we have a special mitzvah to love avat hager sheba v'nichzata kanfei shechina. They've entered into our family. They've come under the wings of God's Shekhinah, right? You have two beautiful mitzvot over here of including them as neighbors, right? Making them part of the community, and to love the convert as well. Okay? This is the mitzvah. He says, V'havta et hager, to love the convert, and to treat them exactly as you would treat any other Jew. That is the mitzvah of the ger. Okay? By the way, it is an averah, a terrible sin, to say to a convert, oh, and by the way, I'm going to include Bali Tshuva in this. You're not allowed to remind them of their past, unless they speak publicly about it. Right? One of my, actually a few of my teachers were converts to Judaism over the years. I, had many of them. And some of them are very verbal about it, and they speak about it openly, right? Like, I was at a program and Nistan Black was speaking, right? So he's talking about his background, like crazy. He's talking about it publicly, right? So I'm allowed to ask him and to share that story. Wow, that his mother and father died right from a drug overdose and they were drug dealers, right? I'm allowed to say that because he talks about it, and now look how far I've come. So I'm not doing that, heaven forbid, to put him down, right? Because that's what you can see. That's okay. What you're not allowed to do is if they don't want you to be like, oh, now you're Jewish, now you're religious. I remember we were 14, 15. And people haven't seen me many years, they say, I remember you had Ysf. I remember you 14. I'm like, I don't want to hear it. Kind of like, you know what I'm saying? I mean, sometimes I do. But, I don't want to spread. You know what I'm saying? You have a certain, So you don't want to go back to that. So you're not allowed to do that to a person. It's terrible avera. Okay? And a convert especially. Okay? So that's that. Next, he says, you have to love, but you're also not allowed to hate. You're not allowed to hate. Now, just to be clear, this is not blanket. You don't have to love everyone. You have to love those people who v'havta et hager. You have to love the ger. But also, you should love people who are kamocha, right? And they have to act like they are reya, like they're a neighbor. Some people remove themselves from that category through their bad actions. It could be they can come back. But some people lose their status of you having to give them love. And the Rambam says this elsewhere, okay, and says that some people forfeit the right to be loved and supported by other people because they act in such a bad way that they need to be reprimanded. I mean, for example, it's very popular right now for this whole laguna thing, right? Those people, right, who've been told to give their wife a get and have been told they've had plenty of time to fix all the situations, they have plenty of time to work it out, and they're going to give the get, and they give a siruv, and the bet and says you got to come, and they don't listen, done. There's no mitzvah to love those people. That's for sure. I mean, the Rambam goes even further and says it's okay to beat them up. But we'll leave that aside. A not much learned Rambam, he does say that, right? Until they want to do it. Because really that's what they want to do. Okay? Not recommended nowadays. We use social pressure instead. Okay? So there are such people you're allowed to hate. However, for the most part, most people are not like that. Most people do things that annoy you and irritate you, right? Because they're, humans and Jewish, right? It just comes with the territory. It's understandable, but you can't hate them. You can't hate them. He's going to talk, by the way, how to deal with people who have upset you and irritated you. Okay, and I'll tell you a very good story about that as well. He says, whoever hates a Jew in his heart is actually transgressing a avera in the Torah, which is in Vayikra, Yud Ted Yud Zayin, Lo tisna et achicha b'levavecha. Don't carry hatred in your heart towards another person. Now it's weird, because you are allowed to, you're usually not held liable for thinking about an avera. Right? If I walk past a McDonald's and I'm like, oh, that smells good, I would love to eat that. Hashem's not like, oh, you want to eat that? You're in big trouble. Doesn't work that way. But if you hate someone in your heart, that's a problem in and of itself. It's unusual, because usually we're only graded by things that we do, by our actions, not our thoughts. This seems to be one of the exceptions according to the Rambam. Maybe the fear is that if you really build up hate and resentment and anger towards someone, you're going to act out upon it. And therefore, if you do feel hatred towards someone in your heart, you're going to have to go and tell them. Okay? If you end up insulting them or beating them up or stealing from them or, insulting, whatever it is, that's another isur. This one of just holding on to hatred in your heart is a problem. So what are you meant to do? If someone does something wrong to you, he says, don't keep your mouth shut. Say something. Do something. Talk to them. Never publicly, but privately. And he says, you should go up to that person and say, why'd you do that to me? Why would you say that to me? I heard you said some lashon hara about me. Is that true? Because if that's true, we have trouble. And I want an apology. Now, if they do apologize, you shouldn't be hard-hearted, says the Rambam, and you should accept it. We did this in Hilchot Teshuvah. He's repeating it over here. He actually quotes the laws of Teshuvah when he says this. But no matter how bad, you should try your hardest to go speak to them and to have it out with them. And many people say, turn the other cheek. I got a story about that actually. One of my, since we're talking about it, one of my great teachers and mentors, who I became obsessed with for many, many years, and used to go to his class, I used to have meetings with him, is, I hope you've heard of him, Rabbi Dr. Abraham Twersky. You ever heard of him? I hope so. He wrote so many books. He was a psychiatrist and a Hasidic rabbi. Brilliant individual. His books influenced me greatly, actually, to become a rabbi. I had the merit of meeting him and talking with him many times. He told me the following amazing story. Listen to this story. He ran a addictions rehab in Pittsburgh. And there was a convent, a nunnery nearby, and they liked to send their nuns to him because, actually it wasn't even that nearby, but it was the closest, I guess, because he was a God-believing, individual. And they wanted them not to be, taken off the path. So they used to send nuns who had problems and priests to him for his guidance in order to help them get off their addictions, whatever it was. Okay? She tells the following story. I think he wrote it down somewhere, but I heard it from him. He said he was one day in his office and a booking came in for one of the women, one of the nuns over there. So he put it down for Wednesday, 2 o'clock, whatever it was. He forgets about it, right? He or his secretary didn't put it down properly, and he's gone that day. So she schleps in, right? She schleps in all that way. She doesn't drive. She took a train, the bus, whatever it was, to come and see him. She gets there. He's not there. This is pre-cell phones. There was a day before there was pre-cell phones. He could have just had to wait. Before there were cell phones, you just kind of just sat and waited. What else are you going to do? And 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, he never came. She gets back on the bus, the train, and she leaves, right? So he comes back. His secretary tells him what happened. He's like, oh my God, I feel terrible. I completely forgot. I didn't put it down properly. So he calls her and says, let's reschedule. She comes back a week later, make sure he's there, and he's there. She walks in, and he says, listen, I really want to apologize. But she said, no. You don't need to apologize. I totally understand it was a mistake. He goes, yeah, I understand, but I want. She goes, no, please. It's forgotten, doctor. It's absolutely forgotten. It's gone. It doesn't even matter to me. He says, no, but I want to apologize. She said, no, please. And he's like, sit down. He's like, I did something wrong to you. The way we act is, you're upset, which is understandable. I apologize, and then you forgive me. That is the interaction that needs to happen. If you don't let me apologize, this relationship is not going to grow, is it? You're like holding this like a chip against me, right, that I still owe you. We need to close this interaction. The healthy way is, I say sorry, you tell me off, don't do it again, and then you forgive me for what I did. That's the way we need to act. That's how you start and you continue a relationship. And he says, maybe that's why you're here to see me. Maybe you have a lot of resentment and by the way, this was the case, he told me, that's actually festering inside that you've never actually managed because you keep turning the other cheek, which is not a Jewish concept. You've got to let it out. If someone upsets you, you've got to say it. You've got to do something about it. That's what the Rambam's saying. Mamash this. Don't just I forgive you. No. Say it. Speak it out. It's like people come up to me, Erev Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. Rabbi, and I do this as well sometimes, but can you forgive me whatever I did this year? I always say to them, I'm like, why, what did you do to me this year? Then it gets awkward. Well, no, I want to know. If you want forgiveness, tell me what you did. We can discuss it. Right? Don't give it like a blank. And if I insulted anyone, be mochel me. See ya. Right? It's cute. Maybe it works. I'm not sure how it works in Shemayim. But really, you got to kind of like, you got to thrash it out. You got to thrash it out. Okay? All right. So that's the way you have to do. Don't remain silent. Say something about it. Get it out of the way. And that is actually a mitzvah to accept their apology. If not the first time, then the second time, not the second time, the third time. After that, after this person comes up to you a number of times, you're going to find some way that, once again, the Torah is trying very, very hard, like we said. We started with lying, and we moved on to hatred, to fix people's problems and get them living together in a good way. Okay? Okay, 2 more minutes can you handle? We've come a long way over here, and there's a lot more food to eat. Okay, I'll just summarize one last piece over here, and that is, there is a mitzvah which people do not know how to do nowadays. Right? I mean, there's probably many mitzvah people don't know how to do that. Paraduma, right? Who knows how to do that? But there's another mitzvah people do not know how to do, and that is to rebuke your fellow. Hochiach tochet et amitecha. All right? And that is a pasuk from the Torah in Parashat Kedoshim, that you should rebuke other people when you see them do wrong. The problem is, in most cases, the person that does the rebuking is somebody who does exactly the same thing, right? And they're doing it not because they want the best for you, it's because they like telling you off. This is, by the way, where I don't like to tell people off, except my kids. I love telling them off. But when it comes to other people, I just don't. I know there's certain rabbis who love it and, oh, Rabbi, you don't do this, and they shout people. There are people who have that style. It's just not me. Maybe I should, I don't know what to say. Because whenever I tell someone off for doing something, I end up doing it myself. It always happens. Right? When I tell people, you shouldn't be getting angry. Lashon hara, I get angry. And sometimes I speak Lashon hara. I'm not going to lie to you. Right? It is what it is. Best to lead by. In our generation, the rabbis, and I receive this from my yeshiva, most people do not know how to give real rebuke. Real being for the right reason, in the right way, the right time, with the right attitude, not to destroy your relationship. I'm going to add a last piece over here. I'm going to finish with this. We all have this phenomenon in our generation, which everyone's obsessed with OTD. OTD? Off the derech. I have thoughts on this, by the way. I'm going to give you my personal opinion first of all. My personal opinion is there's no such thing. They were never on the derech in the first place. I know you see these kids go to yeshiva, and you see those religious children. I'll be honest with you. There's no such thing as an 8-year-old religious kid. He doesn't know anything. What does he do? He just does whatever his parents tell him to do. Right? And be honest with you, probably the same for 12 and 13-year-olds. They got no clue. Now you look at them, right? The kids of the rabbis, right? The religious kids, they know nothing. Okay, maybe they know how to read tefillah. If they're 14, 15-year-old boys, they know how to read a Gemara. But it's meaningless. They don't know why they're doing it. They just do it. I'm telling you, I have kids. At some point, it's going to happen that they're going to have to make a choice. They're going to have to make a choice. And they have to say, am I in or am I out? But why am I doing this? If they don't, at some point, turn around and be like, why am I doing this? They're insane. How can you go through life just doing something because your parents do it? Does that make sense to you? That's the craziest thing. So even the kids in those religious homes, at some point, it could be they're mature. They could do it at 13. I know such people. I know people who came from at 13 and remained from their entire lives. Personally, I do not understand it. At 13, that was not my top priority, right? Soccer and hanging out with my friends and going to the movies was my top priority, right? But there are some people able to do that. Some people have to be 20. Some people 25. Some people 30, 40. I've seen it. But at some point, everyone's got to stop. I'm talking about kids who grew up in religious homes, talking about, and say, why the heck am I doing this? They're going to find their own connection. It's not enough just to rely upon their parents. Those kids who are 13, 14, 15, 16 go off the derech were never really on. They were just going through the motions. I'm not blaming them. I was exactly the same. I felt Jewish identity. I enjoyed Shabbat. I used to, enjoy putting on tefillah and the prayer. I was like that. I went to a very, very religious boys' yeshiva, but I didn't know what I was doing. I don't know why I was doing it. It wasn't until me personally, I'm a late developer in many areas. It wasn't until in my early 20s, I'm like, now I'm making a conscious decision. I want to actually do this. Yeah. So there's no such thing as off the derech. What's not going to work is shouting at these kids. It just doesn't work. Right? Well, he's a 14-year-old kid. He should know better. I should know better. Right? What, you're any better yourself? It's like those people always say, I love this. There's people who say, Rabbi, I don't understand my kids. I don't get it. Right? When we're at other people's homes, they behave so well. They're so well-mannered. And they don't run around, and they don't, we're sitting around the Shabbat table of friends or neighbors, and they behave nicely, and they don't. But when they're home, they're crazy, running around and misbehaving and saying things and not cleaning up after themselves. And I always say to those people, tell me, are you any different? You also behave very nice at people's house, and you come home, you act like an animal as well. It's just the way it is. So, you know what I'm saying? Don't start knocking other people now. As a parent, you're still obligated to educate your kids. Right? It just comes with it. I'm not good at it. My wife is better. Right? I try to lead by example. I try. But in the end, shouting and screaming, that's why this idea of doesn't apply nowadays. In our generation, for sure, you got to lead with love. In our grandparents' generation, maybe our parents, but usually they were able to shout and scream, and you better do this, and right, you didn't get the A grade, they come back with a 98, where's the other 2%? Now, my son comes with a 40%, I'm like, well done, my boy. Right? Abba sheping nachat, b'ribbono shel olam. That's just, it's a weak generation. Right? It's a generation we call in Hebrew an istanis. We're weak. We can't handle it. So although he talks about telling people and telling them off and not doing the right thing, and he talks about it a great deal, I'm not going through it now, I have no time. In our generation, we do it through love. We do it through simcha. That's what people need. They need guidance. Yep. And if you get close to someone and you're very close and they understand you and you really want the best for them, you can say, you choose and say, tell me the truth. Where am I messing up? Like my good friend that does that for me, then it's already a mitzvah and you're going to learn tremendously from that person. That's okay. We said a lot. Thank you very, very much for being part of this. A big thank you to the Kakian family for hosting this beautiful, delicious event. Please finish all the food, right? Because, sure.
Let's say somebody apologizes to someone profusely, and the other person refuses to forgive, to accept whatever it is. What's the dynamic? Is the person that apologizes still responsible for what they did, or is that it? Is that all that he can do?
Okay, so it's case by case, but I'll tell you what the Rambam says, and the rabbis say this. You've got to try your utmost to make peace with this person. It's tough, and not everything's the same. Sometimes they upset you and insulted you, and let's be honest, even if you do become friends again, there's always a bit at the back of your mind that's like, I know what this person's capable of, and you're treading on eggshells. It's understandable. Happens to be the Talmud Devorah says Hashem's not like that. He says Hashem's the exact opposite. When you fall out with Hashem and do an Aveirah and you do Shuvah, He likes you more after the fact you did Shuvah than He did before. It's an amazing thing. It's natural, but you should try your utmost. He says even bringing their friends, having an intervention and bringing others there. Can I tell you an extreme story about this? This is a true story. Happened to... Well, I'm going to turn off the video because I don't want to see the video.